GM. Okay. All right, so we're going to go over a couple of charts here later today as part of the call. Wanted to give a big thanks to everybody who's making sure that the website, the Facebook group, the updates, everything that we're working on, the ISN, everything is just running smooth. We're building for the next event. And let's see if this will pull up too. No, I just switched browsers, folks. If you want to stop this being spied on, I know it's not for everybody. Some people like being spied on. That's totally fine. But for those of you who your preference is, to not be spied on, switch to the Brave browser. It copies Chrome. So when you install Brave, it will take over the logins, passwords, everything else from whatever's stored in your Chrome over to Brave. But then no more spying, no more selling your data to marketing agencies that are going to manipulate your internet feed. So if you're open for things like that, try the Brave browser. Anyway, so as I'm switching over, since I hardly ever log into Facebook, it didn't carry over into my Brave, so I'm going to open up Chrome and just go through, make sure everyone's in the group, in the ISN. All right, GM to that. Memorial Day. Perfect, Scott. Thank you for that. Beautiful. All right, what do we have here? All right. So in case you are not a part of the Team Elevate Facebook group, I'm going to drop it in the chat. Everybody join it. There's some good announcements and support and stuff that come through here. There will be a few updates made to this group very soon. But there's a lot of stuff happening in the Spanish and English world in here. James Gavin also does a podcast update. 90 episodes. Congrats to you, James. Well done. So anyway, exciting stuff there. Investor Secret Network kickoff. Check this out. The Social Mixer coming up next. Property Tour. Scott Buckholt's helping us with those. So that's coming up this Saturday. Impressive. I don't know about that. 5 acres in Duchesne for 75 grand. It seems kind of high. And check this out. Congrats to Becky. When is this happening? Oh, you were late if you missed it. I was late too. Okay, in the ISN, tomorrow we have the networking event up at the corporate studio from 6 to 7, and then we have the mastermind from 7 to 9. Happy Memorial Day. Anyway, if you're not a part of ISN, now's the time, because we got our next challenge coming up on June 5th. And some of you got to ask yourselves, why haven't you done a deal yet? First Flip Challenge starting very soon, season 4. Let me go back. Yep, starting June 5th. We're going to go 90 days. We're going to go all through the summer. And if you've already done it, it's $100 off. Otherwise, it's $597. But that takes care of, you're going to get a swag bag also. You're going to get a hat, a jacket, a couple other things. And then, of course, the daily support inside the calendar. We have the KPI calls. We have the smiling dials. We have the Mitch and Maley Live, that's on Tuesdays. How to run your ARV, we do that on Mondays. Smile and Dial is on Thursdays. And Richard's still going strong with the no, ATM was just last week. That ended. So anyway, it's been a powerful month of May. And how's June looking for you guys? Is June headed in the direction you thought it would? All right, we'll head over back to Brave here. And dun, 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 dun. Today I wanted to look at some charts and see if we could predict the future. Some of you are going to be disappointed, I understand. It's just going to be me today. No Dane. Dane is with us in spirit. His baby was born early last week, and everything's going good. They're just, attending to a growing family. And so he's had, I'm giving him the 2 weeks off. I'm giving him 2 weeks off, right? He works an hour a week with us. But anyway, he said that he needed a little bit more time. So it's me today. I know that a few of you have been working on the method that he's been describing. Pat and Scott, Sandra, Tamara, a bunch of you. So if we wanted to talk some more through those numbers, if you need some help with that, I'm happy to run numbers and equations with you.
I have a deal.
She's got a deal. Okay. Let's look at these charts real quick, and then we will go over your deal. We'll switch to the whiteboard, run some numbers. First chart I wanted to go over with you guys. This is from the Federal Reserve economic data website. And what they're showing us here is the federal funds effective rate. Okay, so right now we are at 4.3. We've been hanging out at 4.3 for a long time. There was a cut from 4.5 to 4.3 last year. And people keep begging for a rate cut. But for several Fed meetings so far this year, kept it the same, kept it the same, kept it the same. I have two different takes on this. Because if we go back to we need to go back to 80. Go back to 80. We'll just look at from 80 to 2000. Excuse me. What is happening here? 1980, January 1st to 2000, just 2000. On the data. Okay, here we go. Look at what the rates were doing from 80 to 2000. And the reason why we're going to have this discussion today is because the next 6 months could totally change your real estate game if you are not paying attention. Also, there's a chart crime going on right here. A chart crime. Never put the top of your data point at the top of your chart. That is just not how charts work. And then we're so close to zero. Why didn't you just put 0 on your chart since we're all the way down here anyway? Anyway, so it's a crowded chart is my point. But look at this. Who was in charge of the Federal Reserve from 1980 to 1988? There was a Federal Reserve hero, some people say. Now, depending on how you're observing and what your goals are for a 2, 5, 10-year real estate game plan or wealth creation in general, you may or may not like that rates went up to the low 20s in the 80s. But what caused this was the Federal Reserve chairman. He was a giant of a man. I'm forgetting his name, but he was like 6'10", huge dude. During this time, when housing prices were on the rise, the inflation was not necessarily friendly, and people were saying, please cut the rates. Drop the rates, drop the rates. Let's go back to 75. We'll grab the leading up to this. And the reason I want to point this out is because this same narrative is happening right now. Cut the rates, cut the rates, cut the rates. We're already at 4, but I get it. I'll explain in a sec. So in the mid 70s, we're hanging around 4, 5. Okay. Then in a 3-year period, it goes from 4% to 19% in a 3-year period. Okay. Now, what happened is over those 36 months, people were screaming, cut rates. We need to refinance our debt. But what happens when we refinance our debt too quickly, too often, too soon is, well, the problem with this chart. Now, this is a 45-year chart of printing money. Can we go back further? This is as far back as it'll let me go. But look at how they printed money. We'll just take the same 20 years. Look at this money printing. So they printed a $1,600,000,000,000. And then during that same interest rate hike, they printed another almost $300 billion. Okay. Now all of a sudden rates are at 19.5. And now people are going, well, how am I supposed to buy a house if it's 20% interest? Right? You still got to put 20% down. They didn't have all the same fancy programs that they do now with Freddie and Fannie and Sallie Mae. But what happened right here is the man who said, no, I am not going to lower rates, made money way more expensive, right? Now, instead of borrowing it at 4% in 76, now you're borrowing it at 20% in 80. So 3.5 years, it went up 5x, right? It went up a 400% increase in 3 years. The cost of borrowing the money. But you know what that did to the value of the dollar is it kept the value of the dollar strong. And this is where we get two opposing views. And I think one reason why some people aren't getting as rich as fast as they possibly can in this country, because they have two opposing views. They got one view where they say, I want to borrow money cheap. I want to borrow money like back in 93 when it was 2.8. But if you're borrowing money at 2.3 or 2.8, and this is what all the central banks and regional banks are all collecting their interest based off of these lending points, what they have to do in order to maintain liquidity is they have to print more money. So instead of refinancing like they did with low rates over here and then prevented that, same kind of thinking, well, now the value of the dollar is so high because you're going to borrow it at 20%, but you could buy more stuff with your dollars. So the dollar is stronger, but it costs more to borrow. So, they're begging him. He drops it for a little bit. He drops it to 10, but then it went back up to 22. So in this 1 year period, think about that volatility. It goes in March from 19 to July down to 9. And then by the time December hits, it's up to 22. So what this did for this period of the 80s with housing is it maintained strong prices. It wasn't fun for lenders. It wasn't fun for mortgage brokers. It wasn't easy for real estate agents because they're now, the thing that they're selling is priced so high, but it kept the dollar strong. When we go back and look at this and what's happened now, we go max out our dollar chart. Guys, this is an equation that when you're not factoring in your cash flow, you just say, here's my mortgage my mortgage payment, my insurance, my taxes, my utilities, my reserve. You got your whole chart for your rental portfolio all laid out. And you go, this is my cash flow each year. But if you don't factor in the last 5 years, that the printing of dollars went from 17 trillion to 22 trillion. The most dollars that have ever been printed happened last month. 22 trillion.
Michael, please repeat that. Thank you.
Okay. When we're factoring in our cash flow for our lives, we want to project out. I bought this house, I'm going to hold it for 20 years, and I know how much money I'm going to make each month because I got my mortgage fixed, my rent, I'm factoring in a 2% increase. And now you could see 20 years from now where your cash flow will be. That's going to be the dollars, the number on the screen, but the purchase power will not look, it won't be the same, even though the numbers on your chart are going to look the same. What do I mean by that? Well, let's pull up our favorite robot, Grok. Everybody uses Grok, right? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask this AI robot, I'm going to say if my dollars were at 17 trillion in May of 2020, and now I'm at 22 trillion in April of 2025, what is my compound annual growth rate? Okay, watch. If I am at 17 trillion in May 2020, and I increase my dollars to 22 trillion, I can spell trillion, by April 2025, what is my CAGR? This is something we don't factor in enough. The CAGR, the compound annual growth rate. Oh, I should have told it to answer me in one sentence. This robot likes to give you a whole big thing. Okay, so the compound annual growth rate is 5.29. Now let's take it out max. If we are in 1980 at 1.6, in 1980, actually we'll put to go from 1.6 trillion to 22.1 trillion in 45 years. What is the CAGR? And how much has the value of the dollar gone down? Oh yeah, and I was supposed to say answer in one sentence. I'll do that next time. Okay, so the answer over a 40-year period is 6%. How much has the value gone down? 6% compound annual growth rate. So we'll remember that number. And the dollar's value has gone down 73%, but that's assuming a 3% annual inflation. It's not 3%. We just ran the damn number up here, the darn number, the pretty number. It's 6%. You said CAGR was 6.06%. So that is the real inflation number. Please recalculate the loss of the dollar value. And this is what irritated the heck out of me. I don't know if I missed it and everyone else saw it and I didn't see it. But here's what we need to get clear on. If the dollars that we own as a society went from 1.6 trillion to 22 trillion in 45 years, that means that increased the supply year after year by 6%. Now, obviously, some years were higher than others, right? If there's a few times 90 to 92 was kind of flat, went from 3.2 to 3.3. So in a couple year period, there were some flat areas, but then there was a screaming area here from 7.5 to 8.5. It printed $1 trillion in 2 years. So what this is saying is that if you factor in the fact that they're printing that much money, okay, this is not CPI. They're trying to fool you right now. Typically, inflation rates are derived from CPI, but that's nonsense. Why would I count CPI, Consumer Price Index? Okay, Consumer Price Index is trying to tell me that the cost of milk, the cost of bread, the cost of gasoline, the cost of power, the cost of eggs, the cost of cheese, cost, is supposed to be at 2%, maybe 3%. Inflation. There we go. See, but then what they'll do is they'll say less food and energy. This is why the CPI number that 99% of the time when you hear someone say inflation is calling it, they're using the phrase inflation, but they're meaning CPI. But when you less food and energy, and then you say, hey guys, hey America, we ran the numbers this year and inflation is 2.3% less food and energy, then that's not the real cost of stuff because we're buying the food and the energy. All items less food and energy. What a ripoff. But let's see what they're saying. Yeah, not even real, guys. This is not even real. I'm trying to say it was 2.8, 2.4. Okay, but what does inflation really mean? It means, well, why did the cost of things go up at all? Is because they printed more money. But the CPI is a basket of 500 things. And if the Federal Reserve is trying to look a certain way, okay, this is over a 10-year period. They're trying to look a certain way. Oh, sorry, this is 22 years. When they say, oh, inflation is down to 0.15, that's incredible. But at what cost? The banks practically folding. Then it got up to 2, then we had our COVID thing, and then it got up to 3, and they're like, trying to blame this, that, and the other. But this increase here happened because they printed so many dollars. But what I want to get back to is the difference between CPI, which is the cost of goods increasing, and M2 money supply, which is the increase of dollars being printed, are two different numbers. We're getting what are they trying to say? 2.2 or 6.06. So the devaluation of the dollar, because we're spending dollars on everything, not just on the basket of goods that the CPI is trying to label. We're spending dollars on everything. In 45 years, you have lost 92% of what the dollar could buy. What you could spend a dollar on, this means a dollar's purchasing power is decreased by 92% over 45, or equivalently, a dollar in the final year is worth about 7 cents in the initial year's purchasing power. So you get a 30-year mortgage, you lock in that rate. Then you say, oh, I need to factor in a 2% rent increase. That is the fallacy that I'm so passionate about clearing up. And what irritated the heck out of me the last 10 years, I didn't realize when I was doing my cost increase, I was doing it based off of CPI data. I was looking at this 2% thing and thinking, oh, as long as I increase my rent by 2.5% or 3% and run my projection, then that'll be how much money I'm charging for rent in 10 years or in 15 years or in 20 years. But if I'm running it off 2% and the Federal Reserve is printing money at 6%, I'm still losing a 4% compound yearly. That's a big loss, folks. And so when I was looking back at 2010, when I started real estate to 2025 now, I got a 15-year time frame. And CPI is essentially, according to this chart, just bounced around between 2 and 4%, right? 2 and 3. Actually down to 0 over here, but I didn't start until right here. This is when I started real estate and then I found Renatus in the end of 2010. Hallelujah. Thank the Lords. And then, so anyway, I just been running every projection, every number, every pro forma off of 2.5 or a 3% rent increase. Because when we get the reports from the Federal Reserve and they tell us inflation is 2%, they're lying. It's not 2%. This is 6%. Okay, so let's ask the robot, what's the difference in dollar value loss if it was only 2.3 and not 6.06? With a 2.3% inflation rate, it loses 64%. So, I mean, that's still an insane amount of loss, a 64%. So if you're not factoring in 2.3 growth every year, you're going to lose 64% over 5 years. But at 6%, you still lost 92% over 45 years. So it's still an incredible loss when it's compounding, but we get psyched out because we see a single digit number and we think, oh, that's fine. But really, we just lost to 92% of the value. So CAGR is the word of the day, compound annual growth rate. And the difference between 2 and 6% over 45 years is a 28% difference. I get that. But guys, gals, folks, maybe I'm the only one that got fooled. I don't know. But how many of you were calculating 6% year over year for your long-term holds? How many of you were doing 2.3%? Maybe you don't want to admit the mistake that I'm admitting. I've been living under for 10 years. Guys, this mistake has cost me $1 million in loss because I was going off the wrong number. I was still factoring it in. I was still, doing my inflation rate. But when I was doing some new numbers, because we just sold the property, made a boatload of money. Now I'm like, where am I going to re-put this money so that it beats inflation? And I started really studying inflation. I'm like, 2.3, that should be easy to beat. The S&P did 5.8 last year and has done historically 6%. And as I started looking into that, I just learned that the S&P is just the inversion of the money printing. So you're not making 6% if you're doing S&P 500 over the last 20 years. It was growing at 6%, but so was the dollars being printed. So it's break even. It's zero. If you're growing at 6% and they're deflating at 6%, you went nowhere. You have more dollars on your chart, but the dollars aren't buying more, is buying the same, growing it at 6%. So anyway, I see a couple comments in the chat here. Let me pull these up and make sure. Volker. Yep, you got it. Compound annual growth rate. Yep. Scott, Grok, Bruce knows. Yep. Yep. So anyway, have I sufficiently irritated you with government money printing yet? Okay, so okay, so Jerome Powell is not going to drop rates anytime soon for the central banks to be able to borrow money. He's trying to keep it at 4.3, which is what it's been the last 6 months. Technically, they could be dropping it every month if they wanted to. And look what they did from 2022. March of 22 to July of 23. That percentage of increase is insane, from basically 0 or 0.1 to 5.3. So they could drop it back down, but they're not going to, because the more that they drop it back down, then refis happen, then more money printing happens, then the devaluation of the dollar happens even faster. So it's this crazy balance. If they just stop printing money and it went up to 15, 18, 20%, our old brain thinking would go, that's awful. How am I supposed to refi? How am I supposed to borrow more money? But if you borrow it on a better asset, it doesn't matter. We want strong dollars overall. So in the beginning of the equation, we want to be able to borrow as much as possible so we can go buy an asset. But then the dollars that asset produces, when it kicks those dollars out, they've been devalued because they printed so much money so that we could borrow money cheaply. Are you guys seeing the problem? The challenge in the thinking between wanting dollars cheap to borrow, to buy, to create dollars, but then those borrows, I want to be strong. You guys picking up what I'm putting down?
So if I understand you correctly, and I might need to rewatch this, the challenge is finding a healthy balance between keeping the dollar strong and
being able to borrow and leverage.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. This right here, from 15 mil to 21 mil in 2 years, or a trill. Print $5 trillion in 2 years was like 9% robbery. All right, Heidi says, eye-opening. I'm glad you showed up, Heidi. We got to run some real numbers now. Okay, so last thing, and then we'll talk about Tamara's deal. Is I want to look at the existing housing. Wait, why is this not letting me go back further? This is it, as far back as I can go? Just 1 year, really? Huh. Okay, well, what are you noticing from December of 2024? 1.1 million houses for sale. Well, normally we got a dip, or we have more houses for sale in, no, sorry. The market slows down in the wintertime because everyone's focusing on holidays and getting ready for the first of the year. So a lot of house buying slows down. We get that. But then we're supposed to be absorbing the inventory as spring comes in, and we should see a decline of inventory because people should be buying the houses. But instead it went from 1.1 to now we're at 1.4. So we've had a $300,000 house increase of people wanting to sell, put it up on the market, and it sits there. So is this a buyer's market or a seller's market?
Seller's market, buyer's market, sellers. It's a seller's market.
Okay, we got one vote for both. It would appear as though it's a buyer's market because the buyer has more choices.
But isn't
Right.
inventory low?
That's been the narrative, but that's not the chart we just looked at. Right? That's been the narrative for a long time. Housing inventory for the last 1 year, right? From April 1st of 24 to April 1st of 25. People went to sell, bought a bunch of stuff. The election was right here. People went, hallelujah, common sense. And they went and bought a bunch of houses. So they pulled 200,000 houses off of the market in that month. Okay. And then what happened with rates? Where are we at? So this was election day. Then rates went down. And then rates went down for a month. Rates went down and down. Some people went, cool, time to buy. And they bought and they bought and they cleared what was on the books. Rates dropped, housing purchase. Rates dropped again, housing purchase. In this 1 month period from the election to the end of the year, the Federal Reserve dropped rates 2 times, which meant banks could call all of their regional borrowers and say, hey, I can lend you money cheaper. And then they all called their local borrowers and said, hey, we can lend money cheaper. And then all the mortgage brokers called all their borrowers and said, money's cheaper. Let's go buy some houses. Let's lock you in. We don't know when it's going to go back up. Let's hurry. So for that month, there was a lot of buying. 200,000 houses were bought. But now listing, and no one's buying. That's how I'm interpreting it.
That's not my experience.
I mean, I have my experience too, but then I am looking at, if we can't trust the Federal Reserve Economic Data website, then we can't trust anybody. Existing home sales housing inventory. House price indexes, house units under construction, housing units authorized by building permits, housing units authorized but not yet started. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in here we can look at. New residential sales. Median. Now remember median, folks. Median is different than mean. If you click on these two things and you think they're the same, you're going to psych yourself out. Average and median. Someone put in the chat the difference so we're all clear. The difference between average and median. We'll start with average to look at. Average. In 1963, the average house sold in America was $19,400. We'll go to 2023, so we'll get ourselves a 60-year window. In 2023, 521. 521 to 19. What is the CAGR? Okay, if house prices went from 19.3 to 531, oh, I better put another zero in here. Over 60 years, what is the CAGR? Because now we know the difference between 2.3 and 6 changes drastically. Let's see what happened. Okay, so the compound annual growth rate for house price is 5.77. So let's round to the nearest, 5.8. And if they're printing dollars at 6, and you've been holding and not buying at a discount, if you've been paying retail on real estate for the last 60 years, 5.8 and 6.06, we're going to round to 6. We got 5.8 and 6. So you weren't winning either if you just held and you weren't being strategic, because the value of the house went up at the same rate they printed money. If the thing goes up in value, the same rate they're printing the money, is it really going up in value? Or are we just losing dollar purchase power? Hey, did someone put in the chat the difference between mean and median? Nobody did. Bruce, correct. This is overall entire, 300 million people all jammed into one. So yes, regional markets and even prices inside the markets, price levels it's going to be different charts for sure. We're just looking at average of averages. Okay, but this is average home sales price. Well, what is the median sales price? Median says 416. Okay, now why do we like median and not mean? Okay, Scott's got it pulled up here now. The mean is the arithmetic average. The median is the center point of the data. Perfect. So average and mean are the same thing. We're going to take the far end. We're going to take that, $5,000 house that Chris Albin bought, and we're going to take that $28 million house that Dane Clark bought, whatever. Both of those are factoring into the mean. And so we get these outliers that essentially made the house median or the average be 530. But we're looking here on our chart right now that the mean is 415. Or we'll take Q3, take the exact same quarter, 435 versus 531. That's $100,000 difference. Why is there $100,000 difference between mean and median?
Hey, Michael, I like to think a median is where the majority of things cluster together.
Correct. That's where the cluster is. And so like Scott put in the chat here, the median pushes away the outliers. The median is way less sensitive to outliers. So if you get a single digit and a quintuple digit, it doesn't move the average. It moves the average more than it moves the median. Scott said it great here. Median corrects for outliers. So now when we're looking at the median and it's saying 419, 430 in this range, it's less sensitive to the tiny houses and the giant houses that are selling. So we can get a more accurate representation with median. So that's when you have to listen when a realtor is telling you, oh, average home sales price, median home sales price. That's two different reflections of data. So this is part of our conversation today because I wanted to make sure that as you guys are planning your next 6 months for your year-end targets, that you really are factoring in the 6.06 increase of dollars, devaluation of your dollars year over year, and that if you're not getting a 6, you shouldn't do it, or that you're going to factor in your rent increase at 6% and not 2%. I think that would probably be the biggest adjustment for us as buy and hold investors. Our biggest adjustment would be that we're increasing rent by 6%, not by 2%. Cool. Cool. Okay, Tamara, let's talk numbers on your deal here. I'm going to switch to the whiteboard on the iPad. And we're going to get some drawings going on here. There we go. Tamara, are you still in a spot to talk?
I am. I technically don't have, just to give you a little bit of information. This is a business friend who brings me the deals and essentially waits for me to make offers and works until we can find something we're both happy with. So I have to create a deal from this. So it's her cousin's house, and I know what she's asking is a little bit too much, but it's a good house. So hold on, I'm just looking. I have my contractor's heading over there shortly. I would say it needs updates. All right, so they're asking 215. He owes $132,000 in a mortgage. There's a dip in the floor. I think it needs to just, again, this is just, I don't know. It's very, I literally just got it, like the information. So it needs a new paint job. The dip needs at least a joist, but that has to be confirmed that's it. That's like a sistering joist. So I'm going to just throw out the repairs and say they're about $20,000. That's an estimation.
Okay. What else?
So he wants to walk away with, she said 30 to 40, so let's just say 35.
Okay.
So that's what I have at this time.
Okay. So now the question is what to offer.
Right.
Yeah. Do you know the details on this mortgage? Is it a 30-year fixed? Do we want to take it over subject to? Or does it have a balloon or what? Do you know anything about the mortgage?
I am texting her that.
Well, let's just do some quick math here. 215 minus 132 minus 35. So I'll change that to 67. 215 minus 67, 33 plus 15, 48. Minus the 20 for repairs.
And honestly, I don't think it needs
That'll
to.
work.
I could probably turn it over right now and get a lease option tenant in there, but I would want to do something with the dip.
When you say dip, I keep thinking about like the market price dipping. Comes the dip. You're supposed to buy the dip. Okay, so 28 is leftover gross, but that's, we haven't factored in agent stuff. So what do you want to do?
That's a great question. And the rents would probably be, I have to double check. It's a nicer, I mean, my go-to would be, what was the 28,000? That was the leftover.
Yeah, that was their ask minus their mortgage minus their need.
So that doesn't include the repairs?
Correct. Actually, no, it does include repairs, but that's not factoring in any fees at all.
So I probably pay her a flat fee of 5,000. That's how we've done it.
Okay. So now you're down to 23. But that's not including closing costs.
Oh, right.
This is gross. That's okay, because remember, we're trying to get it to perform. You're not trying to necessarily flip this one, right?
Right.
Okay, so the minimum out of pocket. One thing we got to get clear on with these needs is all 35 now? Or do they only need 10 now and we can pay them 25 out of our future rent? Anyway, let's say they need it all now, and we'll be less creative and we'll run the scenario. So they need 35, and let's say you can get the repairs down to 10. Because you're not going to flip it for fancy retail, you're just going to put a renter in there. Then you got to pay the other 5, so 35, 10, 5, and then closing costs on something like this, we'll say is probably another 2. Let's round up to 5. So we have some nice numbers. So you need 55,000. If you just want to make this nice and easy. We'll take over the mortgage. We'll give you 35. We'll fix the house, pay the fee, and now it's mine. 55 grand. Okay, so now the question is, what's the payment here? And then what's going to be the rent? And are you doing a lease option? So you're going to collect something up front?
Yeah, and typically in this area, it's about $5,000.
Okay, so we got our lease option payment of 5 grand. That's pretty low, but okay.
Yeah, that's what this area can afford.
What would it rent for?
I would say 14, 13, 4, I would say 1350, 1400. That's just off the top of my head because I know the area.
Okay, well, let's go with 1400. Now let's say this is for sub 2, right? They're going to let us take over that mortgage and we'll have this fixed payment. But if you went to go just buy it traditionally and you had great credit and you had 20% down, and let's say you're buying it for, if they need 35, the ask 215 is no. You could pay them 195 and they could still get 35 out of it.
I think I could get that number. That's what I had in my mind, actually, the 195.
So 195 for the purchase price, 20% of that would be 40,000 down for your loan, right? Then you would get a mortgage of 160 at today's rate. So we'll punch that in our quick calculator because I don't have it on this iPad. I'm going to use it on my phone. And today, 360. And we're borrowing 160,000. So your payment, if we're getting 6% investor loan with 20% down on conventional, your payment would be 960. But then you got taxes and insurance, which I guess is about 100 each a month. So let's round up to the nearest 100, which would be 1,200. And that factors in a little bit for reserve, which we have to anyway. So rent 1,400. PITI. It's 1,200. And if you're putting 40,000 down, or over here, you're coming out of pocket 55. Well, I guess you would come out of pocket 45 because you got to pay your homie. Anyway, let's do some quick math. So if 40,000 is out, and 200 is our cash flow between these two, times 12 would be 2,400.
Honestly, I think 175 is more like a better ask purchase price, because it's like the 195 are like the houses that are all nice and done. This is really needs updating.
Sure. Let's do it. 175 times 0.2 for our down payment is 36,000. Minus the 175 means we're going to get a mortgage for 140,000. And that'll change our mortgage payment to 140 minus solve 840. 840 plus taxes and insurance puts us at 1,100 a month for PITI. Okay. So if we're renting it for 1,400, we'll either get 2,400 or 3,600 divided by our down payment. So what is the ROI there? Return on investment. We're dividing our 40,000 by our return. Oh my goodness. 6% here. So that would be break even, remember, because they're going to print 6% more dollars this year.
Yeah, and the other one's 0.9. But yes, 6%. Yeah.
Okay. So a 9 is okay because it's beating the devaluation protocol. I mean, there's no guesswork. Do you think 45 years of a trend is going to stop this year? Or no, they're going to definitely print the money. In fact, I saw a report that said the Trump administration just requested $400 billion in increased budget from Congress. So they're definitely printing more dollars this year. So how can we make this deal better, folks? We're looking at Tamara's deal. We got a motivated seller. The house needs repairs. If we buy it with our own money, you know, Tamara's got 36 grand, maybe 40 to pay for some repairs. You get 9%. How can we increase this? Well, I guess one thing to factor in is that you're getting a 5% or $5,000 lease option payment.
I mean, according to Zillow, I think that it's even worse. They're asking way too much. They have it listed for 207.
And you're going to offer 175, and you'll be able to close in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But the thing is, this is where during the due diligence you request a copy of the mortgage. And the thing is, it's so easy to request because you're going to get a copy of it from the title company anyway. So you could say in your offer, once they accept it, then you're gonna, the hour after you get the contract back that they accepted it, you're going to submit your due diligence document requests, right? The standard stuff like, do you know if the roof is leaking? Do you know if the HVAC is leaking, right? Like the standard disclosures. But in there, you're also going to put in, give me a copy of the mortgage. You either get it from the homeowner that same day, maybe next day, or you'll get it from the title company in 5 to 7 days. But then you'll see the mortgage and you'll see, is this a mortgage worth taking over? Because if you can still give them their needs of 35 grand, but then you can just pick up what's owed, you'd be way less. Technically you would still be the same out of pocket, but you'd be giving it to this owner instead of giving it to a mortgage company. But you'd be getting a cheaper mortgage, potentially. Each of your payments would go more towards principal because they'd be further into the deal. Hold on a sec, baby. Hi. So this might be where you could potentially give them more money because you find out there's something sweet about the mortgage, and you say, hey, I can actually pay you more if we do it this way. And then you give them an AB option. I don't think your AB option should be based on price. I think the AB should be based on terms. By the way, let's factor this in real quick. Instead of this being 40,000, we'll do 36 divided by 35. And what is that interest? Or that ROI? It's like 11 and a half.
What is it? 30?
10.3.
Yeah.
That's a little bit better. Factor in the lease option payment. Now we're getting into double digits at least.
Here, Dad. Welcome. Welcome.
So you should make your offer. Then during due diligence, ask for a copy of the mortgage because you're going to get the deed info as well. And your friend has it as a lead, but it's also listed with an agent.
No, she's listing it herself.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Well, that should be even easier then, because then you can tell her, like, look, my goal, your goal, and the owner's goal are all in alignment. But one thing that's important is to make sure you're factoring in that 6% equals 0.
So technically that 5 is only 4, or that 10 is only 4%. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, man. If they're gonna print this much more dollars, another 6% CAGR, right? Increase of the monetary supply, which is different than the CPI. They're gonna increase that by 6% this year. M2 equals money supply. CPI equals cost of random goods. M2 money supply has been 6.06. CPI cost of random goods has been 2.3. So yeah, your bread might go up by 2.3%, but what you can buy with your dollars is going down by 6%. So yes, they're going to take a total of 6% away from all of your dollars. If your dollars grew at 10%, but then it shrunk at 6%, then yes, you're left with 4%. Isn't that something?
Huh.
So when we're thinking long term, do we really want the Federal Reserve to lower the rates so everyone can borrow more so they can print more money and devalue our dollar? But then we'll have more dollars. We'll have more dollars, but the dollars will be weaker. A very interesting time to be in, especially when you consider that the last from 2010 to 2025, real estate has just gone up. We've been in up only mode for 15 years. That is not normal. But in that time period, we've also, gone completely digitized everything, right? Auctions never used to be on the internet, right? And we got short-term rental strategies. We got work from home stuff that's so different now than it was 15 years ago. But typically the cycle is, 7 to 10 years. Right? From here to here should be 7 to 10. Or from here to here should be 7 to 10. But we got 15 years. We got one of these going from here to here has been 15 years. That's crazy. And it comes from a lot of money printing, a lot of refinancing, and a lot of dropping rates. So this is a dinner discussion this week. As you look around at the choices, the preferences that we have, and what you may or may not be voting for over the next year or two, midterms, blah, 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 all this stuff. What do you actually want? Do you want less dollars, but stronger? Or do you want more dollars, but weaker? I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm just saying if you live half in this world and half in that world, you're going to get psyched out. And that psych out could cost you millions of dollars. So yes, investing, but one thing, what's the real solution to something like this? Sales. Sales with huge commission. Sales with huge commission. If you make one sale a month and you get $12,000 times 12, you're going to make $144,000 increase in your income. Now, because of M2 increasing at 6%, you're going to lose 6% of that money just in purchase power. You'll still have the dollars. And that's the funny thing. You read your spreadsheet, it says 144. So you didn't lose dollars, you just lost power. The power to buy. Well, what's 6% here? 26.8 is about $8,500 approximately. You're losing, but you're still up 130,000 something dollars. So while you're out there buying real estate, this is why we say the Renatus wealth cycle is the best income opportunity in the country, because you're going to make money making sales. You're going to put that money into real estate so that you can beat this M2 number. If you cannot beat that M2 number, you're poor forever. You're poor forever. But if you can at least beat M2, and we'll round to say 6.1 instead of 6.06. Beat that number, you're fine. No more getting psyched out by the CPI number. Okay, not real. Cost of random goods. What if you make 2 sales a month, 3 sales a month, or even 1 sale every other month? And now you're making 60 grand, 72 grand. My point is you need more dollars. Yes. When Tamara is analyzing this deal, We got to remember too, the benefit of real estate is that we got those 4 quadrants of benefits, right? Remember in the tax and legal class, we're drawing out the 4 quadrants of the benefits, and we get cash flow, we get appreciation, we get depreciation, and we get amortization. So when we're looking at this 9%, it just reflecting this quadrant. Okay. We don't buy because of appreciation, that's called gambling, but it's still there. Amortization, we could factor, and that depends on the mortgage she gets or the mortgage she overtakes. And then depreciation could still add to your net worth substantially. Okay. So yes, the cash flow is nice, but if you could also increase your cash flow from your business to inject into real estate. If Tamara were to also, let's say, depreciate it and save, 5% on her taxes, the amortization, debt reduction, or, equity or debt reduction by 5%, and then appreciation at 5%, because we just ran the numbers on house prices, and for the last 65 years, it's been going up at 5.77%. So we can count on 5 here, 5 here, 5 here. And then if she gets 9 here, now she's looking at 24%. 24% growth when you factor in all the elements of what the real estate deal can do for you. And then from there, you would minus the 6% M2 robbery. So now we're at 18% total return on investment. That's not cash flow. TROI is not cash flow. Did everyone follow that last little bit there? Jasmine, Jacob, Heidi, Gilda, the last 2 minutes make sense?
No, can you say it again? Sorry, my phone froze.
Okay, when we're counting in this 9% rate of return, that's only factoring in one of the elements of the benefits of real estate. Right? So we're like, oh, 9%. Well, that's 9% on leverage. But then if we were to also say that you're going to get in the depreciation category, you're going to get 5%. And in the amortization category, right, where the renter is paying down your debt, and let's say that's 5% for you. Depends on your mortgage, but maybe less, maybe more. And then we confirmed the appreciation on real estate since 1960 has been 5.7%. Put that on do not disturb. Hold on, baby. Let me finish this drawing. So what I'm saying is that the 9% here, the 5, and the 5 equal 24. But then we have to deduct the 6% real cost of inflation, the M2 money supply. We have to deduct that 6%, and that's what gives us the 18% total return on investment. And TROI is not CCR. Total return on investment is all of these things. CCR is just cash flow.
But then if you're buying this without using your own money, Michael, so it's really an infinite because you didn't use any money, right?
Right. And that's where the variables come in for each individual. What I was trying to encompass in this discussion was the pieces that affect all of us, and that is M2, and that is appreciation. Right? These pieces that affect us all are going to be appreciation, because that's a nationwide number, and this M2 This is a thing that affects all players of the game. But cash flow, depreciation, and amortization are situational and personal.
Talk, Dad.
I am talking.
Look on this.
I appreciate all of you for being here today. All right, Tamara, put that offer in and let us know next week what happens.
Awesome. I will. When can I get the recording to this?
It will be added to our YouTube channel, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, for sure by the weekend.
Okay. Awesome. Sounds great. Hey, Remington. Thank you.
You say have a great day.
Bye. Have a great day.
Oh, so
everybody.
cute. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Have a good one.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.